It's been 10 years since home prices peaked in the real estate bubble, but the bubble's not over for millions of Americans. The movie The Big Short came out recently, a great movie, action adventure. One of the characters in The Big Short movie was a quirky guy named Michael Burry, who was the first to figure out that there was a bubble and, even more important for his case, how to make money out of it, how to make his fortune out of it. The real Michael Burry did an interview with New York Magazine right after the movie came out, and the question was, have we learned something? Has there been positive changes from the real estate bubble? And he said, the biggest hope I had was that we would enter a new era of personal responsibility. Instead, we doubled down on blaming others. The group that I want to talk about today were the opposite of that. These are people that took full responsibility, and in fact, maybe more responsibility than was for their own good. Remember when foreclosure first happened, there was a lot of talk about strategic defaults. These people who could make their payments, but they quit making the payments and got foreclosed on because the house's value had been cut in half. So financially, it seemed to make sense for them to walk away. There were costs, of course. It would ruin their credit scores for a few years. They wouldn't be able to get a mortgage for a number of years. So there were costs involved, but a lot of people did that. What I'm going to talk about here is those people who decided not to do strategic defaults. These were homeowners they bought in 2005, 6, 7, and they were phenomenally underwater. The value of the home could be less than 50% in these bubble cities, but they continued to make their mortgage payments and continue today. But it seems pretty clear that a lot of the people who decided not to do strategic defaults are still underwater. For example, in Phoenix, the home prices now, using the Case-Shiller Home Price Index, are still 33% less than at the peak in 2006. So even though prices have come up phenomenally in the last few years, you are still underwater. Well, your home is not worth what you paid for it if you bought at the top of the market. It's still a long way to go before you'll be at sort of the break-even price. Zillow estimates that 6.5 million homes in the United States are underwater or have negative equity. That means the mortgage amount that the owners owe on that house is more than the home is worth. And I think a lot of those, not all of them, but a lot of them, are people who bought in 2005, 2006, 2007 at the top of the market. And still today, if they're in a bubble city like Phoenix or Miami, are still underwater. Traditionally, when you bought a home, after 10 years, you would probably have maybe 30% equity or more. These poor people have been paying their mortgages reliably for 10 years, and they're still underwater. Buying a home used to be the American way of accumulating wealth. For these people, it really destroyed wealth for them. And an odd effect of having all these homeowners who are underwater is that they are trapped in their homes. They can't really sell a home because if they sold it, they wouldn't make enough money to pay off their current mortgage. Looking back, it seems like the strategic defaulters often made the right financial decision. If they had walked away and did a strategic default in 2010, they could have bought another home by 2013 if they used FHA loans at a lower price than what they paid and with much lower interest rates. So that was probably the best financial decision for them, but not everybody could do that because that would mean renting for a few years. That means upsetting the kids, the family. Foreclosures led to a lot of divorces. And some people, their jobs don't allow them to get foreclosed on, or it's bad for their career anyway if they get foreclosed on. But an even bigger factor was that a lot of people thought it was unethical to not pay their mortgage. According to Zillow, over 300,000 people in Chicago have negative equity in their homes, almost 300,000 in New York. And there's several cities with over 100,000 homes with negative equity. And one of the biggest drivers of that is those are cities where the home prices are still now, 10 years later, a lot lower than they were at the peak of the real estate boom. Unfortunately, many of those people who decided not to do a strategic default for whatever reasons, for ethics or family concerns, they probably would have been better off financially if they had done a strategic default. Now, there's a lot of blame that goes towards home buyers during the boom. They were using crazy loans and they were flipping houses and doing investment. These people weren't. A lot of these people were doing 30-year fixed mortgages. They were putting down good amounts of down payments. Their only problem was they bought in 2005, 6, or 7 in a bubble market. They were the reliable people. They were playing by all the rules. They weren't trying to make a fortune. They were just trying to live a good life. But today, they're still paying the price. The executives at the lenders who didn't see the fraud or didn't do anything about the fraud that was being reported to them, they got away, no problem. But the most reliable people, the most reliable Americans, are still paying the price today, some of them, if they're in a bubble market and they bought at the top. According to Zillow, 6.5 million Americans are underwater for a total of $500 billion of negative equity. So for millions of Americans, the Big Short really means $500 billion of negative home equity. I'm kind of feeling bad about this whole thing, that the people who were most reliable, who got plain Jane 30-year fixed mortgages, they weren't doing investing, they weren't trying to do anything fancy, they were playing by the rules, that they are still being hurt today, 10 years later. Have I missed something? I was rooting for them. I am rooting for them. I know they were great people. They're the kind of people we would want to do business with or to be friends with. But financially, it didn't work out for them. It seems sort of the ethics of the United States has changed since the real estate bubble. That they were playing by the old rules, and it turns out America had moved to a new set of rules. Maybe I'm wrong. Leave a comment below. I'd love to hear it. So I'm John Wick. I'm with realestatedakota.com.